Hello and welcome to JTV YouTube Live Shorts. I'm your host, Janette Burke, and today I'm joined by Gail Treasure. Gail is a retired school teacher who has written this very interesting book called Wife by the Hour. And Wife by the Hour is basically based on her trips to France, where she observed behaviors and also questioned or peeled back the Institute of Marriage. And it talks a lot about sex workers, and it gives rise to what they go through and the rights that they deserve. So welcome to JTV YouTube Live Shorts, Gail Treasure. How are you today, Gail?
Hi, I'm great, Janette. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm going to delve right in. And in the intro, I said something about you wanting to peel back the matrimony marriage, you know, what it's all about. And I guess I'm kind of curious, and maybe the audience is too, you know, what led you to write an erotic type of book, erotic romance type book in this genre as opposed to other genres, and, you know, take a crack at all these things. What motivated you to do that?
Well, first of all, I wanted to write a romance, and you know, you want to have interesting characters. I'm a teacher, so the main girl, Julia, she's a teacher as well as an escort, and I've just always been fascinated by sex workers ever since I was a little girl. And my mother explained to me who the happy hooker was and what she did for a job, and that always kind of stuck in my head. That that people would do that they would, you know, be proud of what they did, and you know, that's a like a legit job. And I mean, it's a compelling character. So and also I wanted to write a story about two girls who met when they were in France as teenagers, because I've been to France many times and with other girls and things, and said they were going to return when they were older. So with those ideas, then that's how I hit on the idea of Julia being an escort. She falls in love with her last client, because everybody loves the pretty woman story. But he turns out to be the husband of a girl that she knew when she was in France as a teenager. So I just like to make really twisty stories. And I mean, I love France. I think it's a beautiful place to set a story, and especially a romance. But I've just, like, as a married person, and I have been married for like 45 years, long time. No, 35, sorry. I just look around me and I think, like, a lot of people don't look happy, and yet they're together. What is it that keeps people together? You know, and so Alex, who Julia meets, he's her last client. She's never been in love. She's a 43-year-old single mom. And, you know, after their first date, she is in love with him. And so then she's reflecting throughout the book. She's thinking, okay, she's only ever seen married men. It was her kind of shtick as an escort, because she wanted to remain not open to the public. She wanted, you know, her face hidden and so on. And so she looks back and she looks at all of the clients that she's had, and she's like, well, they were all married and they all wanted to stay married. But they were all, you know, they came to see me as an escort. What is it that kept them married or kept them from leaving?
I wanted to delve into this actually, because this is some of the questioning that I have. So I am going to ask you, in the book, it talks a lot about having the escort being sort of the perfect wife, mother, or at least the wife at home is like this. And sometimes even the escort, particularly Julia, takes on that role. Why take on that role? And why do men seem to be so fascinated with that role and yet still want to pursue escorts on the side?
Why? So why would a man see an escort
when he has, you know, he's pursuing this, he loves this woman at home that's like the perfect wife and the perfect mother.
Often he loves her. That's one of the reasons why he would stay married, is because he loves her. So it's for, and I've actually read a lot of, you know, articles and things about this. often what they want is just an experience that they don't get at home. You know, like as if you wanted to go skydiving and you couldn't skydive where you were, but it's just something you always wanted to do. So often they're just seeking a certain sexual experience, or just, you know, something out of the ordinary, just something different. So, and sometimes they aren't incredibly happy at home, but they're staying for other reasons. They could be staying for religious reasons. They could be staying for money. They, you know, so that was what, like, Julia's trying to figure out what is keeping Alex married to Zoey, because she wants him to fall in love with her. But she is also, you know, once, like initially when she meets Alex, she's doing a job like she does with all her other clients, and she doesn't know their last names. She doesn't know them from anyone. Her agent has checked them all out, and it's always safe sex. They always wear a condom and so on. But once she actually falls in love with Alex and she knows that, you know, in her heart, she wants him to leave Zoey, then she's conflicted. You know, it's not just a job. It's
right. But
know,
is she not also playing this role of perfect wife and mother because she sees that and she thinks that's the way to catch him, to make him fall in love with her too?
I think he falls in love with her. Well, we don't even really see that necessarily. Like, I don't want to give this up, but he's attracted to her sexually. And so she's just like a perfect partner. But they only are in their home. Like, she never leaves her home with him until everybody ends up back in France, which I don't want to give away what happens in the book. But basically in the beginning, he's just coming to her for sex that he's not getting at home, a certain kind of sex that he wants. And I guess just to feel, you know, like human, because really his marriage is not amazing. And he gets comfort. He gets, you know, somebody who's always like agreeing with him, going along with him. He's the center of attention when he's with her, but he's paying for it. So.
Right. But that's usually the way it goes in these cases, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the other purposes of the book is to really draw out what sex workers go through and their rights and what have you. And 1/3 of sex workers are in some type of violent situation. Sometimes it goes reported, sometimes it does not. How risky is this business of being a call girl? In the book, let's say Julia maybe is protected because you said things were checked out and they're using condoms. It's protected sex, but is that really the case for most sex workers?
It's the case for some, and in the world, about 1/3 of countries in the world have legalized sex work. So, which Germany, Greece, Australia. So, for example, if you go to a brothel in Australia, you say you're a man client because you could be female, but like it, first of all, you have a shower. Secondly, you get a physical inspection. And, you know, there's lots of people there. And if you're not willing to do the safety stuff and wear the condom and so on, you just don't get serviced. But in Canada, we have the Nordic model, which sounds fancy, but it's really not. And it's not sufficient because it means that Julia is not committing any crime. It's not a crime in Canada to sell sex, but it is a crime to buy it. And it's a crime to help somebody sell it. So therefore, in Canada, if you have a driver, a bodyguard, a secretary, all of those people are committing a crime. So it makes that woman more in danger because she can't hire people to protect her, you know, like in that legalized brothel in Australia or Nevada, where, you know, there are rules and the clients have to follow the rules. And it's even worse in the United States because in most of the places in the States, the sex worker is also committing a crime. And so if somebody hurts you, you're so much less likely to report it because you also are reporting yourself as committing a crime. So the more that sex workers have rights, like Germany, Australia, Turkey, Switzerland, like so many other countries, then that's what protects them. It's, you know, it's all of the people around them and the rules. So, but yeah, for sure.
Do
it's
you
risky.
see yourself, any part of you, any part of your life in Julia, other than the fact that you already said you traveled to France quite often, you went with different girlfriends, and there is that meetup component in the story itself, in the book. But what more of Julia do you see in you, or vice versa? Julia and you and Julia?
With me, I'm a mom and I have daughters, and Julia has a daughter. And a lot of people actually really love that part of the story, because there's a whole side story with her and her daughter. Her daughter is turning 12, and she's not ashamed of what she's done, but she's never told her daughter. And so that's part of the story as well. But I didn't, and I mean, I think I'm a caring person, and I mean, I think sex is great, but like, I didn't base Julia on me. This is the third book that I've written. And I think the first book that you ever write has a lot more of you in it. It just kind of happens. But during the pandemic, I listened to so many podcasts with sex workers, and, you know, sex workers interviewing sex workers. And like, so I probably heard like 50 different sex workers. And I was just floored at how intelligent, business savvy, hardworking they are, you know, because to succeed, they have to be on top of so many things, you know, like how they look, their advertising, their market, money, like their finances. And so I mostly based Julia on those sex workers whose podcasts I listen to, especially one called Exotic Vivian, who works out of Tampa. She's just brilliant.
Well, you know, it is one of the oldest professions in the world, right?
It absolutely is.
And let's face it, there are, you know, very savvy business women known as madams that have been around for years that probably could teach any business person some incredible business lessons. So I hear you on that one. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you something else, because I think that maybe the world has changed a lot. You know, we have digital platforms that are showing different types of women, everything from tattooed and, you know, perfect to body buff to all these different types of women. Is that detracting away from men having to, or the need to, or the desire to go to a prostitute these days? Do they want other things? You know, how is it affecting it, that the work that is?
I can't speak on behalf of the whole industry, but like something I've noticed is, for example, there's OnlyFans. So like a lot of men will, you know, you can have an OnlyFans account for not that much money. And I think it's actually quite interesting, because like one of the most popular OnlyFans girls said, you know, porn is free. So what men are paying for on those sites is what they feel is a connection, like a human connection with somebody. Mm-hmm. And what men often want, like from their escort, or if they're a sugar daddy, which I'll tell you what I feel about that in a second, but is like a girlfriend experience. They're looking for, like, they want to feel that connection with another human being. So would they still, I think an escort has always been something that's really only for a certain percentage of people, because it's expensive. Like, and so I think certain men with a lot of money are still going to pay for it. But yeah, if you didn't have very much money, obviously you could go online, but you wouldn't have the same in-person connection, because like a really good escort, they offer so much more than just sex, especially like there are ones, you know, they go on trips, they go to concerts, they go on cruises, they go to restaurants, they're actually providing companionship. And a lot of times men just want a date, but they don't want a complicated situation. that's a ongoing situation, but they want to experience something with another person. So,
but like even in the book itself, Alex, the man that Julia falls in love with, the last client, the married man, is paying for her and her daughter to come to France, right? So
it's a lot of money.
It's interesting to me that these men are already in these marriages with this woman they're supposedly happy with, and they're willing to foot the bill there too, but they seem to want to emulate that again, or in the case of Julia and Alex, sort of emulate it again in like in a repetitive sense, because in the end it seems like he's also looking for her to be the perfect wife and mother, but he wants the connection. And what I also find interesting, if just finish this one, is that you were talking before about how men want this connection and they have to be able to afford it. But there's still, and this is something we can comment on before you get into the sugar daddy thing, is that there are a lot of men today that go on dating sites like Plenty of Fish and pretend to be single when they are very much married, right? They don't share that they're married, they pretend to be single, and they look for other women. I think that's very false pretense. To me, that's not it's not right to do that, because it's a lie. You're starting everything out on a lie. But it happens, maybe because they really want to be going to prostitutes, maybe because they want the other woman and they don't have the money or whatever to be able to do that. But it does exist, right? And another thing exists too, and this is something else you could comment on, is that there's a percentage of men today who don't even want any connection at all. They want dolls. They want a woman that doesn't even talk back to them.
If that's what they actually want and they're willing to pay for it, and it's in a safe situation consensually, I don't have a problem with that. The thing about sugar daddies that I wanted to talk about, and first of all, just when we talk about money, I do have a friend who was an escort, and she got $8,000 for a weekend. Somebody had her take a train somewhere. She went off and had this very nice, weekend for $8,000. So there are definitely people who are willing to spend this money. But it was work for her, because she had to pretend to be this guy's girlfriend, the whole weekend you have to be kind of faking it, like you care, like you want to be their girlfriend. Not that you want to be their girlfriend, but they want a girlfriend experience. So maybe you do want to be there and you enjoy that person's company, or maybe you don't, but you're getting paid and you do the thing you're getting paid for. But the thing with sugar daddies is, and I would say this to any girl, it's completely exploitative, because a man will say, "Oh, I'll pay your rent," because they make out as if giving somebody money is crass. So it's like, "Oh no, I'll pay your rent, or I'll pay your tuition, or I'll buy you that pretty dress." But the amount of money that they end up spending in a month is very little. It might be $1,000 or $2,000, and yet they feel like that person owes them constant texting and coming over and going to restaurants. And compare that to the $8,000 that this girl got for a weekend. So just the idea of sugar daddies is just super exploitative. And if prostitution was legal in the United States, you would have far less of that, and women would be, well, I say women, but it's not always just women, but sex workers would be getting a more fair wage. So I don't know. Maybe I didn't answer your questions, but go on.
Coming back, well, you did answer the question. Coming back to, your purpose in writing this book. So what do you want the readers to walk away with? I mean, you're educating them about why men go to prostitutes, or what they want.
It's really I'm educating people as to, and it's not really that big of a deal, but why they don't leave their marriage. So during the story, because there's 3 parts to the story, there's present day, where she's with Alex, and then all the times when everybody ends up in France. There's past, where she reflects back to when she was a teenager and she was there with Zoey, because you get some of that in the first half of the book, so that her and Zoey's backstory. And then everybody ends up in France in the present day. But interspersed with that, there are 7 sections where she explores the 7 reasons why men don't leave their marriage, but see prostitutes. And the way she does that, or escorts, the way she does that is she has recorded conversations, just jotted them down, that she's had with clients. So, and people actually love this part. So every little bit, you get a section where she's reflecting back on some conversations she had with married men about their marriage, and that helps her to understand why they're staying, what it is about their marriage that they like. And so even though the sex isn't great, they'll stay married, because she's trying to figure out what is keeping Alex with Zoey. And she will figure that out near the end.
Okay. So as we're near the end of the interview, I wanted to maybe raise 2 points. There was a relationship between Julia and Zoey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, though, is this sort of taking a stab at the fact that some women are very competitive and jealous with each other and want what the other one has or doesn't have? For example, Julia started as a single mother in this story, and her friend was married to Alex, and that's what Julia wants. How far do you think women are willing to go using this story, whether they're, you know, an escort or not? How far are they willing to go to maybe take what, or want, or have what their friend has?
That is a big part of the story. The whole idea of how jealous, you know, Julia has to face, because stuff happens in France that leaves them not friends when the France part ends. And so Julia really questions herself. Do I really want this man? Am I really, really in love? Or do I just want what Zoey has? Because Zoey always seemed to get the
Zoey,
guys.
sorry, yes, Zoey.
Yeah. So I would like to hope that, you know, at the end of the day, we don't want to hurt people and just take things that belong to them. And I think that just for the sake of having something, because, well, then you're all going to be sad at the end. But I like the way it works out. But she certainly, there is an amount of jealousy and that she's had for, you know, because Zoey seemed to get all the things she wanted.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, that doesn't serve us well as
because
women.
it's very commonplace in our society today. I'm sure we all have stories that we could speak of about this, where, you know, couples live a life in maybe suburbia, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on in suburbia that people don't always want to talk about, including lock and key parties and all kinds of different things, wherein people do play switchies sometimes for the long term, right? They wind up leaving their spouse because they fall in love with somebody's best friend. It works on both sides, men and women, and marriages disintegrate and they start over again and they play switchies. I mean, look, Shania Twain had that same thing happen to her. So to what extent, you know, is this a part of our life? I mean, I think what you're saying here, in part in the book, through the illustration, obviously, because it's a fictional story, is that, you know, I think you're questioning relationships in general, like what they really.
I do. Yeah, I do.
What they really mean to one another, and, you know, how satisfactory they are. And we started off by saying, you know, this whole thing about marriage, you know, tearing it apart. Is it really what it seems? That, are people really happy? Is it a contraption? You know, why do they need outside sources to fulfill the needs that they don't seem to have within their own home, but yet they don't want to leave, right? This is really a good question to ask, because it's happening every day in our
It happens all the time. And like, just as a teacher, as a human being, I have watched, you know, marriages start and end. And I have 2 daughters, and I've always said to them, and they look at me like I'm crazy because I've been married for so long. And I say, you don't have to get married. Like, I think people generally do want to get married, but I think we go into it really blind, like, and we just think that once, you know, you say I do, that it's all going to be good from then on. And it doesn't mean actually having like open conversations. Like, how many people get married and they didn't even know that the other person didn't want children? So I would like, yeah, I always think it's like people start playing a game, and then after about 5 years, they're like, oh, we didn't read the rules. You know, what were the rules of this game? The only rule that people seem to agree on is don't cheat. But they don't even agree on what cheating is, if you ask them, you know. And there's so many other things, like, you know, about children and sex and money and all kinds of things that they don't talk enough about. So it's not that I don't think marriage is a good thing, but I don't think we do it well in our society. And
That's
yeah,
because there's pressure around being married, right? If the pressure was taken away, maybe then people would address some of these issues you bring up ahead of time and kind of, you know, not go in blind, as you say. So there's one last question, and then I'm going to ask you to give us a website so that we can go purchase the book. But the last question that I have is, how do you think the women in the book, but maybe in life, how do they respond to these, you know, escorts and what have you, when they find out that the husband's visiting them or developing a relationship with them? What's their response?
I can't tell you about what happens in the book because that would be giving away the book.
Yes,
I know from my own personal self, because I know several cases where this has happened. It's really shock. I think in the beginning they're shocked. To think that the person was doing a secret thing that they didn't, you know, that I think that's what most people would feel initially, is shock. And then, you know, betrayal. There are cases where people are open about it, though. And that I even talk about that in the Julia story too, where somebody knows that the other person is going to the sex worker. You know, maybe the spouse is asexual, or maybe they're polyamorous or whatever, that they know about that. But I think, I mean, if you find out your spouse is doing anything, even, you know, gambling or something behind your back, like, you're in shock.
Right.
And
so
it's sad.
Deteriorate the marriage, right? It's going to completely deteriorate it.
It could, or it could be the start.
Cases.
It could be the start of something like, I don't know, a deeper sort of connection between the people. One of the points that I try to make is that, you know, the relationship between the client and the escort is a business transaction. So, you know, and the men who are doing this often are thinking, well, I'm not betraying her emotionally. It's just sex. Now, of course, I don't think the women take it that way, but I think that often that's the way the men see it. And it makes it easier for them to, you know, rather than have sex with their secretary and get this woman all upset, they're just, it's business. I think men are a little bit better at that. And I do question at the end, like, why is it women don't go to see escorts as much? I know it happens.
That was my next question.
Why don't they? You know? So I think it's because I think often men are looking for a physical experience and women are looking for a connection that's more meaningful than what they're going to get in an hour or 2 hours or something.
Right. But you do call it wife by the hour. So this is kind of my final point here, is wife by the hour. You know, this is implying that that's what the man wants. He wants this wife for an hour, right?
He wants sex for an hour.
Wife by the hour. He's getting a paid business arrangement. He's getting a person, like you say, to have an experience with. I don't think they're really looking to go there to, you know, get entangled in a new relationship or find a new wife. So why the title Wife by the Hour?
Wasn't my title. And, you know, I now know that, like, a lot of authors don't get to choose their title. That the publisher chose the title. I had just called it, her escort name is just Julia, and it's kind of a joke, but it's also like a homage to Julia Roberts, who plays Pretty Woman. So because she didn't want an adjective, because a lot of them, you know, like the one I told you about, Exotic Vivian, like a lot of escorts will use an adjective and then their name. or they use a made up name like Sally Jones. But she and her agent were talking about a name, and she was like, no, it's just Julia. Don't give me any adjective. So that's what I called it. But the publisher, when they want to see if a book is going to do well, they pitch it to booksellers like Amazon and Indigo and so on. And they pitched it with the title that they came up with, which was Wife by the Hour. That's really catchy. It tells you what it's about. My title wouldn't have told you what it was about. It could have been about Julia being anybody or anything. So I do actually quite like it because, it gives you the idea that this is a book about an escort or a sex worker. So, yeah.
Right. But actually,
the story's mine. The title's not mine.
The Wife by the Hour, I guess. I understand the implication, but they're not becoming wife. But obviously, right. The implication is you go to this person to get what you don't get in your wife by the hour that you pay for.
And Julia she is an escort who, as I said, only sees married men because she doesn't want to date people in real life because she is a mom. She is still, she does supply teaching. She doesn't want to be out. Like she doesn't want to be face out at that when she's being an escort. Because there's both ways, right? There's people on the internet and some of them blur their face. Some of them don't show their face at all. And some of them, like Julia, you wouldn't even find on the internet. Her agent just sent people to her.
Mm-hmm. And not every escort falls in love with one of their clients.
No, but sometimes they do. Because remember, I told you I listened to so many escort podcasts, and I would say probably 2 of them, at least, that I heard do. And they are in relationships with them. And, what people might not realize is often sex workers are married. One of my favorite podcasts is called Somebody You Love, and it's with 2 Australian sex workers. And where, as I said, it's totally legal. And the one of them is married. And this is her job.
Well, there are sex therapists that do this type of work too. So it's not so unusual. All right, it's been riveting. We've learned a lot of stuff here. Now we got to find out where to go to get the book. So tell us that. Give us the link.
Okay, well, I do have a website, gailtreasure.com, but also just Amazon. It's available on Amazon. So.
Okay, yeah.
It's also from RE.Books website, which is my publisher. Yeah.
Okay, great. And for the audience, don't worry, all the links will be in the show notes. But obviously, this is a great read. We're coming into summer now.
It's totally a beach read. It's people say it's fun and interesting, and I just love that.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks to my lovely audience for tuning in today as well. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off for JTV YouTube Live Shorts. We come out every Wednesday with the new episode featuring usually book authors, but this segment also features some small business owners and emerging professionals and that sort of thing, but mainly book authors. So we hope that you'll come back and join us again. Until next time.